Hey guys, Hamsterwheel here with a new video, and some of you may know that I've been playing on this fresh server called Crypt WoW. And since I got to level 60 there and did some of the PvE content, I decided to share my thoughts on the server, the same way I did a while back with Retro WoW, Warmane and Hellfire. So what is Crypt WoW? Well, Crypt WoW is a Wrath of the Lich King server, but the max level is 60, so only the vanilla content is available. So, in that regard, the server is quite similar to Primal WoW, but there are some interesting things to consider. First of all, you could not get deeper into the talent tree on Primal WoW after you've chosen your 31 talent point. This meant that there was still a huge imbalance between how much DPS each class could do. For instance, warriors were always at the top of the DPS charts, while mages were always struggling to even get into the top 10 of the damage meters. Here on Crypt WoW, you get to spend more talents in each tree, which means paladins can get Crusader Strike, druids can get things like Treants and Eclipse, and so on. So in theory, those underdog specs can be a lot more potent here, which means they are able to be a solid DPS class without having to go the extra mile like you would normally would on, let's say, your average vanilla server. The server also has adjustable XP rates from 1 times to 3 times, though all the other rates are set to 1 times rate. Duo crafting and inscription are not yet available, but Blood Elves and Draenei are, so both factions can benefit from Paladins and Shaman buffs, and they have cross-faction enabled, so be prepared to team up with a Gnome if you're a big hairy Tauren, and vice versa. One more thing to mention here is that just like Primal WoW, Crypt will eventually open up the Burning Crusade part of the game, and later on the Wrath of the Lich King content. Speaking of content, where exactly is Crypt WoW right now? Well, they've only been up for 2 weeks, and it's a small team of developers working on the server, so the only thing available as of right now are the dungeons, not the raids. Wait, what? No raids? Yes, but here's why. You see, Crypt WoW is trying to do something different and address some issues that came with Classic WoW. Look, I love Classic WoW, and I realized the suboptimal specs were just part of that experience, and I wouldn't want it any other way when Blizzard finally releases Classic servers. With that being said though, it would be kind of fun to see what things would look like if those problems were fixed, so to say, on a private server. And this is what Crypt WoW is trying to do, as they are currently working on implementing multiple tier sets that are aimed towards certain specs. Instead of just having the tier 1 Cenarian set, which is obviously geared towards Resto Druids, they're also working on implementing a Feral set and a Balance set. Same goes for Shamans, Paladins, and so forth. They're also planning on releasing 2 different difficulties for every raid. One, normal mode, which will be a 10-man mode, and the harder 25-man mode. So yes, that means 10-man and 25-man vanilla raids with extra tier sets dropping. Oh yeah, it's a lot of alterations, and for some people it's a lot to swallow. But I was honestly intrigued by this whole idea. Being able to raid as a boomkin with more talents, making them much more viable, and the fact that gearing up wouldn't be a nightmare with those extra tier sets, that sounded like the owl dream come true. And since the XP rate was 3 times, I wouldn't have to invest a huge amount of time into this private server to check it out. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? The leveling content. So 1.5 weeks ago, I made my very first character on Crypt WoW, a Tauren Druid, and he was going to be balanced at level 60, but because Feral is my preferred spec for leveling, I decided to keep the Owl Dream at bay for now. The first time I logged in, I set my experience to 3 times rate and started my journey to level 60. One thing I noticed here is that when you choose the 3 times experience rate, you will be starving for gold and you'll barely have enough to buy your spells during your early levels, so keep that in mind. I was a little disappointed to see barely anyone playing here when I was going through the lower level zones, and throughout my entire leveling experience I barely bumped into other players, which is not exactly a good sign in regards to their population. More on that later. Anyway, I was pleasantly surprised to see that the quests were working just fine. There were no noticeable lag spikes, and through my entire journey of leveling from 1 to 60, I don't think I had a single disconnect because of the server crashing or anything like that. Even more complicated quests, which involved escorting a mob or NPC using dialogue, all seemed in order. After I hit level 60, which took me about 1.5 days worth of playtime, I looked back at my leveling experience in a very positive way. Sure, the lack of players was a bit meh, and I have to say that the pathfinding here on the server could still use a bit of work. Also, when I was streaming a couple of days ago, I found out that Cenarion Hold has no NPCs in it. Yes, you heard me, there's absolutely nothing here, which means no quest you can pick up. The Twilight mobs and everything else is there, but for now this village is for whatever reason completely empty, which definitely kinda sucks. Despite this weird bug I recently discovered, I still have to be honest and say that my leveling journey from 1 to 60 was overall quite enjoyable, and for the most part without any kind of hiccups from the server itself. Though from here on out things would start to get a little bit more interesting. So after I hit max level, it was time to start playing as a balanced druid. One thing I really like here on the server is that there are no guides compatible for the way the server works. Both vanilla and Wrath Lich King guides simply wouldn't work, as the talents and level cap both get in the way of just googling a cookie cutter spec for you to use. No, on this server you really have to think on which talents to choose. You see, as a Boomkin I could choose to slap all my talents in damage increasing abilities, but Boomkins at level 60 with not a whole lot of gear go out of mana rather quick, so you gotta find the right balance here between talents that reduce mana cost and the ones that boost your damage. After fiddling around on a talent calculator and respecting the balance, it was time to do some dungeons. So how were they? Well, the dungeons themselves actually worked quite nice. I didn't see any huge problems with them, though the wonky pathfinding here and there did cause some of the mobs to behave quite different than they should, but honestly the dungeons were a lot of fun. So far I've done Blackrock Depths, Scholomance, Stratholme and Blackrock Spire, and they all worked pretty good. There is a bit of a problem though, and that's the fact that they are, in my opinion, a little too easy. Of course, with this being Wrath of the Lich King, everything is just a huge AoE fest, and even the bosses themselves don't really offer that much of a challenge when you're in a group with only a bunch of blue geared level 60s. This is one of the reasons why Primal had increased values and a healing nerf, so they would be more challenging and you just couldn't rush through the dungeons. Though to be fair, this is what these dungeons are like in Wrath of the Lich King private servers, so who knows, the devs left these alone to be easy and focus on making the raiding content a lot more challenging. Only time will tell. So when it comes to the population, Crypt WoW doesn't really have this as their selling point. It's quite clear that Crypt WoW has a very specific idea and philosophy of what they want their private server to be, which obviously means that they are going to attract a small amount of players compared to, let's say, a new Blizz-like vanilla private server. So how low is their population? Well, unfortunately, very low. We're talking less than 100 people online on a daily basis, which does mean the zones feel empty and barren. And even capital cities can feel like wastelands with how few people are playing here. This also means that it's quite hard to find dungeons while leveling, and the lack of players means you're going to have to do dungeons with the same people most of the time. And that means that if they aren't online, it's going to be even tougher to get a dungeon going. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So with that few amount of people playing here, you'd imagine this community being very tight-knit. And you'd be right. Sure, you don't get to spam dungeons with tons of people every single evening, but the few people that do play here are, based on my experience, very friendly. They're willing to help new players gear up, and the guild that I'm in is always trying to get dungeons going and trying to host runs for Upper Blackrock Spire. I think this is really the strong part of a small populated server. There's almost no room to be an anonymous asshole if you want to eventually join raids, and newcomers are often welcomed with open arms, and from what I've seen are also helped quite a lot with gearing up and leveling their professions, which overall gives the server a very friendly and open atmosphere. So in regards to their community, it's actually quite nice. It's tight-knit, and because of the low population, everyone's got their back. You got people asking in guild chat if someone else needs a blue axe they just found in a mob's corpse, and like I said, people helping each other out to form parties for dungeons. And now we arrive at the conclusion. Crypt WoW is obviously still in its diapers, so to say. They still have a lot of work to do in regards to their raid content, and time will tell how both those raids and the extra tier sets will work out. For now, Crypt WoW offers a unique twist in a sea of Bliss-like servers, so they definitely have an edge over any other server that comes out, with its only bragging right being that it's a fresh server. The unique twist does mean that you should not expect the server to attract a lot of people, as it is targeted towards a niche market. So the population will always be rather low compared to, let's say, Warmane Outland, Light's Hope, Chronos 3 or whatever. Still though, on their own they have a nice project going, which admittedly isn't perfect, but is overall enjoyable and shows a lot of potential. If you like the idea of raiding vanilla content but with a Wrath of the Lich King core and the extra alterations and features Crypt WoW has, I'd say definitely give the server a go. With the 3x raid, it doesn't take long for someone to get to level 60, so you can jump into some endgame content and see for yourself if you like it or not. And that's all I have to say for now about Crypt WoW. My plan is to stick around here a bit longer, see what the raiding content is like, and maybe do a full-on review later down the line. For now though, I want to thank you for watching this video. I'm Hamsterwheel and have a good one.